Welcome to today's webinar we're basically going to be covering crisis management. This is very exciting stuff. We're going to learn all about what happens behind the scenes when companies make the bad decisions at the last minute and so forth. And with us today, we have Eric Bernstein of Bernstein Crisis Management coming to join us, and he's going to be taking us through a lot of a lot of information, a lot of things about crisis management and how to handle things in this type of situation. We're very excited to have him. So basically, I'll let him tell you guys a little bit about himself and what he does, and then after that, we'll start the webinar. So, Eric, thank you for joining us today again. This is super exciting. Uh, you know, what do you do? I mean, basically, how did you start this type of business? How did you get into this business?
Sure. So I was, I didn't start my kind of career journey, thinking that I was going to work in crisis management. It was a family business, but I was dead set on being a teacher. I was three-quarters of the way to being an English teacher,
Wow.
and then this thing called social media really started blowing up. This was in the very early 2000s when we were on MySpace, if anyone remembers that.
Yep, yep,
Um,
I remember that
and
very
yep.
well.
And I started doing a little bit of side work because hey, I just knew what social media was and not many other people did, and realized maybe this crisis stuff is a little more interesting. Nope, no disrespect to teachers, but
Uh-huh.
maybe this is a little more my thing, a little more excitement to
Sure.
crisis. So I just kind of fell into it sideways, and here almost 20 years later, I'm running the family business. So I'd say a little bit of luck, a little bit of circumstance, and just knowing how to use the tech and how people are communicating really led me into it.
That's amazing. So, I mean, obviously, there's no universities, there's nothing, like, out there, there's no online courses that teach us, correct? You either know it or you don't.
There's a couple that are emerging, but they're still they're theoretical, right? They're not in the trenches, knowledge. It is the kind of thing where you need just great PR skills, right? You
Mhm.
need to be a very strong writer. You need to be a strong speaker. But beyond that, you need some soft skills, empathy, really being able to put yourself in someone else's shoes and say, why are they mad at us? Why are they upset? It's not because they're a jerk. There's a
Yeah.
reason. And understanding that is probably the number one skill. If you can really understand how someone else feels, you can get to the best way to talk to them.
Gotcha, gotcha. Okay, so, I know you have a presentation for us and so forth, plus I have a lot of questions for you. What would be better for you? You wanna jump straight into the presentation? You want questions first? What works?
Yeah, let's jump into some presentation. I'll
Okay,
cruise through this and then I'd love to take questions after.
sounds good, alright. Go ahead, and whenever you're
I will
ready,
share my screen
share
here.
your screen, and I will turn it over to you. Okay, let's see here. Alright, you should be up and rolling.
Okay, perfect. Oh, let me see if I can. Okay. Um, okay, so we're talking about managing the rage trend in reputation and crisis management. So, what I really want to dive into today is the challenges and the strategies involved in adapting to what we know is an increasingly volatile uh, public environment, right? People are just, they're a little high strung these days, right? I don't think that's a
Yep.
shocking revelation to anybody.
Nope.
And so, what we really want to do is figure out how do we adapt to this climate and why is it so important for you to be actually doing something about it? We talked. I'll just touch briefly on our history. Since January '94, Bernstein Crisis Management has been doing crisis management specifically. Hey, yeah, we know how to do a regular press release. That's just not our focus. When our company was founded, the wisdom and what people were not afraid to say is that you can't manage a crisis. That was the conventional wisdom back in the mid
Interesting.
'90s. You
Huh.
can't manage a crisis. My dad famously had a chip on his shoulder for quite some time because people told him, "You don't manage a crisis manages you, and you just hold on." He said, "I don't think so,"
Mhm.
and thankfully he was correct.
Interesting. Wow.
So crisis preparedness, this is a lot of what we're talking about. If you know something is happening, if you know people are upset, if you know people are more emotionally charged, quicker to outrage, then it makes sense to be prepared.
Mhm.
Money talks, right? When we say that on average, crisis planning saves effective organizations one third of the total cost of crisis, that's money in your pocket, right?
Yep. Exactly.
94% of people with crisis plans believe planning did save them money.
Hmm.
I'd say that's pretty good stats there. And the single largest financial consequence of crises isn't, hey, we couldn't sell our product for a week. It's that reputation damage. People remember I couldn't get something I need from them. I couldn't get the support I need.
Yeah.
I couldn't log into my email, whatever the issue might be. And that hurts your reputation even after the operational factors are solved. Um,
Interesting.
of note here's I think all of us look at reviews before we go somewhere, right? I don't remember the last time I went to a restaurant and didn't pull up reviews, stayed at a hotel and didn't pull up reviews. Almost 90% of people would pay more for services from an organization with higher ratings and reviews,
Yeah, I would. I mean, I
right?
that's the first thing I go to, exactly.
Yeah, exactly. And it seems like a no-brainer, but you know what? It's not fun to ask for reviews from
Nah.
people all the time. It's not fun to deal with the negatives there and try to make it better. So it's important to realize that almost 90% of people are looking at those, and that's going to get you business if you work on them.
It's true.
And in polls of global executives, and if anyone wants links to these stats, I didn't just make them up. I'd be glad to share them with you later.
Yeah, it would
63% of your brand's market value can be tied to its reputation.
hmm.
63%. That's a lot
That's
for an asset that people tend to ignore.
yeah, I mean, I see that though. I see that anywhere you go. The reputation. I mean, even some people, a lot of companies can even just, ride on a name, I think with the Craftsman Tools, for instance, Craftsman Tools, they were part of Sears for so long, and I think was it Lowe's purchased them a few years ago because of the name. So the reputation, they just take that and write on it. So
And they've been right. I mean, I know plenty of people who work with tools for a living. Craftsman is not what it once was, but
mhm, yeah,
it's been riding on that name for years,
yeah,
and it really
exactly.
shows the value that those positive reputations bring.
Yep, exactly.
So here's just kind of a quick overview. So the best reputation management efforts, and you'll notice a theme here of prevention and preparedness. The best reputation management efforts prevent issues from ever becoming crises. So if you know for a fact that more people are coming to you with a general lack of patience, pent up anger, and they have a real quick trigger finger with popping open their phone and heading to Google to leave you a review, heading to Twitter to make a post, tagging you on
Mhm,
Facebook, whatever it might be, then some kind of countermeasure is in order. You can't just watch it happening and say, gee, they're upset. You need to
mhm,
do something about it, right?
gotcha.
Um, so today, what I really want to get into is understanding why this is happening and how you adapt to this trend to protect your brand's reputation. I mean, this is an extremely valuable asset. People are worried about how do we maintain our machinery?
Mhm,
What do we do if the building catches fire? And unfortunately, what gets left behind is worrying about the reputation.
yeah, gotcha. So, just a quick thought popped up in my head. If there's something that does pop up, especially, with this, someone just, like you said, they have a happy trigger finger on their phone or whatever. Is there a general timeline that you need to get to extinguish the fire, or are we going to cover that later? I don't want to jump ahead, but I was just wondering in general if there's something to say, hey, if it's better to douse it within 24 hours, or is there?
Oh, sure. Well, as quickly as possible is the
Okay,
answer, right? What
gotcha.
we see a lot that's concerning is, say you have a medical office, somebody leaves and they're upset and they tell your front desk people, I'm going to ruin you online. And people say
Mm,
that outright all the time now.
oh,
What we see too often still is that someone will say, okay, noted, write it down, and then they just won't tell anyone else till the next week.
Oh
Say, well,
no,
it's Friday afternoon,
man.
and the amount of damage one person with some internet savvy and some time on their hands can do over a weekend is quite a lot. So I mean,
Mm,
it's address it as quick as you can, or you're playing catch up. And I'll tell you, when you're playing catch up, it's difficult because those review sites don't want to remove things. People don't want to take posts down. So if you can't address it before they do that, it's just much harder.
mm, man. All right. Wow. Interesting. Okay. So the rage trend then, yeah, let's talk about this more. I mean,
Sure.
yeah.
Yeah, so we've been, especially over the last few years, I bet everybody watching this, I certainly have had this conversation many, many times, but people are saying, hey, people out there are a little more angry. They're a little quicker to be upset, right? And great observation, Eric. What a professional, right? Um, it's obvious, right? But what are you doing about it, right? Are we
Mm,
just talking about this at the water cooler? Are we just complaining about it in the back room, or are we doing something? So, knowing that we have this trend of people being more angry, being more upset, being more agitated, it's clearly visible in interactions, social media, online reviews. What do we do? And how do we handle it? And you really don't need to take my word for it. Pew Research Center found that 5 in 10 US adults have experienced some form of online harassment
mm,
directly to them, not
wow.
even as a business. An American Express study showed that more than half of Americans had fully scrapped a planned purchase or transaction because of a
Mm,
bad experience. Another survey found that emotional responses to customer service interactions affect customer loyalty. If you have a problem and you call someone's helpline and they don't help you, do you spend money with that company again? I
mm.
typically don't.
Yeah, you wouldn't. Who would? Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Oh,
And you know what? It's hurting your employees too. They're calling it emotional labor. And so employees have to constantly manage their emotions and the emotions of customers. And look, if you're straight out of high school and you're working in an ice cream shop or wherever you're working, right, a retail counter, you're typically not trained to deal with somebody who's screaming at you,
yeah,
who takes their phone out and records you when you're tired and frustrated. And
exactly.
so there's a lot getting put on frontline employees where they just aren't equipped to handle it. And unfortunately, a lot of employers are getting them ready.
Mm, wow. Do you feel like this is something though that is learned where people see other people raging and then they kind of say, "Oh, okay, this is what I do to get what I want." Kind of like the whole monkey see, monkey do
I
attitude, or is this something else? I mean,
I think it's part of it. Certainly, it's one of those learned behaviors like
mm,
everybody sees reality TV stars throwing their glass of water or wine on
that's
somebody,
true.
and so suddenly that starts
Yeah.
happening a lot more in real life than it ever did before.
Mhm,
I think it's both, right? People just say this is what you do now. This is the norm. I
mm,
think people always also realize this is how you get things fixed, or this is how you get help. If you
got you.
cannot get help otherwise, you
Yeah,
raise a fuss about it. Now, some people use that power for evil rather than just to fix a situation that they're doing, right? And
yeah,
we do see more and more people, I guess the word for it would be extorting businesses, saying, look, I recorded your employee doing this, I'm going to post it unless you pay me, refund me, whatever it might be. So
wow.
there's it's a real double-edged sword.
Oh,
I will say, if a company isn't doing what they're supposed to do to provide services to me, I'm good at getting attention, because of what we do and because we see this.
uh,
But too many people just do it because they're mad and that's who they ran into.
yeah, I see. So they're having a bad day already, and then it's kinda like the straw that breaks the camel's back essentially, and then
100%. And you'll
yeah,
see, when you see these things over and over, you start to notice patterns. And when you see someone who's left a devastating review for someone, nine
mhm.
times out of 10, when you look in their history, it's just 1-star reviews for a bunch of different businesses. So
Ah, okay, so they
does
just
become kind of a habitual thing. There's
yeah,
also the psychological aspect of, it's proven when you have an interaction on social, when you get likes on something, you get a little dopamine hit. and that is
Yeah.
literally the driver of
Hmm.
repeat behavior and addiction. And
Interesting.
some people do get borderline addicted to that attention where they're getting it any way they can.
Interesting. Well, I never thought about that until you just mentioned it, but I've seen so many times where you go look at reviews and there's either mostly 5-star reviews or 1-star reviews. It's rare
Yes.
to see like a 3 or a 4 or even a 2. It's just always either, "Hey, you guys are awesome," or "You guys are terrible." It's either one, you know?
Yeah, 100%. And that's all you see. I don't remember the last time I saw a 3-star review,
Yeah,
right?
it's rare, very rare.
Yeah.
It's you don't see many of them at all, so,
Mm-mm.
huh, interesting.
So this is a new normal, right? Heightened emotional reactions is a new normal. I
Mhm,
think that new normal is a term we're all familiar with now. Doesn't have to be about COVID. This is just we need to recognize the business environment that we're operating in. If we're not adapting to the business environment, we're behind the times. We're behind the competition, and you just need to be ahead of it. If you don't accept that people are this way, if you want to pretend, this is like the people who 5 years ago were saying, "Well, I don't want to use the internet for my business. I don't like it."
mhm.
Where are those businesses now?
That's true. Yeah, they're gone. I mean, it's they're they're nowhere. They've been bought or they no longer
Right?
exist. Yeah. Huh. Because yeah, what was it? One of the big ones that I think went that route. Wasn't it Kodak? I believe. I think they were kinda I forget what something along their
I think
lines.
that's certainly possible.
Yeah, something they did something along those lines. Maybe I'm wrong, but I mean, I'm thinking of somebody else, but
Well,
anyway.
we see it even with when we're talking retail, we see it with musicians, right? I believe Garth Brooks won't put his music on streaming services. So
Hmm.
when's the last time any of us heard a Garth Brooks song? He
I
didn't stop making them.
Yeah, I think, like, maybe the early '90s was it. That was the
Yeah, he's
last
got albums. I think he had an album that
Oh, I
came
had no
out this
clue.
year.
Huh.
Yeah, so hey, he just won't work with the environment. And hey, he's fortunate enough to be, crying all the way to the bank on his millions already. Most
Yeah.
of us aren't in that position, right?
No, exactly, exactly. Huh, interesting.
So being aware of this stuff is the first step to crisis prevention. You need to understand the public's more likely to express their dissatisfaction aggressively, especially through digital platforms.
Mhm,
And so adapting to this environment is crisis management. And I think I should say towards the top here, a lot of the things I'm saying about crisis management, you'll say, well, wait, that's customer service. Well, wait,
mm,
that's operations. The way we consider crisis management is holistic. Crisis can't be in its own little box because bad customer service leads to crises. Bad
mm,
operational procedures lead to crises. So by solving all of these, we stop more little issues from becoming a crisis. So that's why we're hitting a broader set than a lot of what crisis people talk about. So look, we know for a fact that people are coming to you, they're mad, they are ready to leave a review, they
yeah,
are ready to record you, and we're all carrying, a little high def recording device
yep,
right next to us. If your phone's not more than a foot away from you, I'd be shocked,
mhm,
right? Everybody has it. And
exactly,
so we just need to focus on knowing this is going to happen no matter how good we are, and focusing on prevention and preparation. So there's a few things that you need to do. You
okay,
need to be proactively monitoring. If you're not monitoring customer sentiment, and I'm talking things like watching what people say about you on social,
hmm,
what people are saying about you on review sites, having your own kind of doctor's offices where when you leave they have the little tablet that's happy, sad, neutral. Which one were you
yep,
today?
yep, seen
Things
that.
like that are
Mm,
incredibly valuable for just knowing what's happening before something's a full-blown crisis, right? If you get all sad faces that day at the office, something went wrong.
mm,
And you can look at that and you can try to fix it. And really a big part of that is engaging proactively. If somebody fills out a survey that says I would never recommend this place to anyone, a manager just getting on the phone for 5 minutes with that person can completely change the outcome. Instead of them going and telling 10, 15 people never do business with them, they might go say, "Hey, I had a problem and the manager called me," and they're actually really cool.
yeah, and that does help. I've seen that, it was a local dealership I deal with for my vehicle. I had a problem with them. Same thing. I was shocked. I complained about it and left a bad review, and it was 24 hours maybe later, and the manager was in touch with me, and it was great. It was a great experience, and I usually don't do that. It was just one of those rare exceptions where they did something that was really crazy, I thought. But yeah, I mean, you have to stay on top of it, and that's the perfect example.
Yep, 100%. We talked a little bit about training and empowering employees, and I'll talk about this a little more down the road, but just training your people. What do I do when someone screams at me? If you haven't been in that experience and if you don't have training, you're either going to freeze or, depending on your personality type, you might start yelling back.
Yeah.
And so it's really important to train somebody, right? It's we're putting people out on stage with no rehearsal. That's what you're doing when you put them out on the front lines. They are representing you. I don't care if it's their first day. They're representing your brand. And we're just putting these people out there with no training at de-escalation, no training on conflict resolution, and a lot of times no flexibility. If we're talking medical offices now, discounts are a slippery slope for medical offices. You do have to be careful how you give them, but give them the power to, if someone had to wait 2 hours more than they were told, give them the power to knock $30 off the office visit.
And that's
Things
fair.
like that. Yeah, little flexibility. Let them do something, because you know what? One bad review is going to cost you more than that $30.
Exactly. Yeah, that's very true. Huh. That's
Developing plans too. Do you have a crisis communication plan? Are you just winging it every single time something bad happens? If you're not consistent, that starts to look like maybe you're dishonest, maybe you're playing favorites.
mhm.
But having that plan is key to consistent response and making sure you're not missing things.
So, from your experience, how many, and you don't obviously it would be a ballpark estimate, how many companies do you think, if just you were to say, actually have some type of crisis prevention plan in place? Is it?
Most have something like, if there's a fire, what do we do?
Mhm.
Far fewer have something like, if one of our executives tweets something really crazy today, what do we do?
Wow.
A shocking number of huge companies have no plans to address reputational issues at all.
Oh, so they don't even monitor their social media sometimes, or they just?
They maybe will be, but it's not formalized.
Hmm.
Or maybe they're doing some of the baseline things, but they don't have a crisis communication plan
Mhm.
that has things like, what process do we follow? If we see a negative social media post, what do we do? Do I just wing it every time? Do I just send it to my manager and hope? Or
Yeah.
do I have an escalation protocol,
Wow.
follow ups that are scripted in, things like that? It's just not baked in. We have dealt with very, very large companies, multinational companies that do not have a crisis plan.
That's
I
surprising.
have one client that it's an organization that has been around for 120 years. Their first crisis plan is being done this year.
Wow. Oh, I guess I can see why, because it may be a company that old, they've gone so long, been doing their thing and all is good. This also, like you said before, this is all new to a lot of people, especially people who are a little older. I would say probably, 35, 40 and up. We're not used to the rage. We're not used to all that.
Right.
It's something we didn't grow up with as kids. So I can see in the company you're talking about, I can see why they would be like, yeah, this is, maybe a one in a million chance, but it's, according to you, obviously it's rapidly growing and it's everywhere. So,
Yep. Yeah. And it's the kind of, a lot of people just don't do it until they run into something big enough where they say, we don't know how to handle this.
mm,
And unfortunately, it costs them a lot more than it would have to just have a plan in the first place.
well,
So speaking of being aware, you need to understand how much damage one internet savvy person can do these days. We worked with Amway years ago. One of the first cases I worked on, actually, in the early days of blogging, where some very upset Amway distributors took over search results for the name Amway. When you searched Amway, all you saw was blogs about how horrible it was to work for Amway.
oh
Um,
no.
and they couldn't get rid of it, to the point where they operated under the name Quickstar in North America for years before being able to rebrand. Now, It's a little harder to do that now, but I'll tell you, it would take me about 30 minutes to make 15 Google accounts and decimate someone's reviews. It's
Hmm.
that easy. It's
Yeah,
really that easy. It's
there's no,
scary.
yeah, I didn't think about there's no limit on how many Google accounts you can create. It's not like
Nope.
so you can just go through and hit them hard.
Yep, exactly. And damaging information can spread online. We work with veterinarians a lot, and when they do a surgery, no surgical site looks great after, right? Even the most perfectly done surgery, they're stapled, whatever it might be. We've had people post pictures of surgery after surgery pictures where there was no problem at all, and literally having death threats sent to the veterinarians because they say their pet was injured, they did a butcher job, etc. It's just way too easy to spread
Mm.
misinformation.
Yeah, and we like something I heard years ago, people tend to gravitate towards negative information. They almost feed on it.
Yeah,
And
you look at any newspaper, right? It's not feel good stories on the front page. I think
no,
that
they're
gets
not. Yeah,
proven.
you flip up any, yeah, mainstream media, it's all like death, destruction, mayhem, everything's all over the
Mhm,
place, so,
100%.
yeah.
So we talked about employees. I'll just hit this quick. So every employee is a part of crisis management efforts, whether you want them to be or not. Now, sometimes that just means that they have a role, and their role is to tell people that they're not the person to talk to. Here's the right person. Sometimes their role is to deliver messaging. But if you're doing all this crisis prep and you're not training frontline employees at all, you're in trouble. And a lot of times, what we'll see is employees will try to help, and they'll just dig the hole deeper.
Hmm. Yeah, because obviously if they haven't received any training, they don't know what to do. I mean, they're just, you know.
Yep, and they'll wing it. They'll try to explain in the grocery wherever they are, and that's problematic.
Hmm.
This is just more of why employees need to do it. They're on the front lines. They can prevent situations from escalating, and they're your eyes and ears out there. They see and hear the complaints. They see and hear the problems, so they can get to them. So for our frontline employees, we really need our frontline employees to be at least a bit prepared for those tough conversations. I once started a retail job at Kohl's actually. And day one, I was running a register on Black Friday.
Oh, no, that was your first day on the job?
Day one, running a register on Black Friday where lines are, and this was old Black Friday before online Black Friday, right? This
Yeah, I
was
remember.
lines around the store. Everyone's furious. Machines are going down because they're overloaded.
Oh,
I didn't
no.
have any training on how to deal with that.
Man, I feel I'm so
Yeah,
sorry.
I didn't know what to do when somebody is furious at me for
Uh,
asking if they want to open a credit card. And people are just getting dropped into that mode too much. It always makes me think of well, we had the recent situation, at least here in the States, with T-Mobile, where there
mhm,
was a rumor that they were going to switch everyone's plans to more expensive plans without their permission.
mm.
I can't even imagine what the poor people working in T-Mobile stores were dealing with.
They were getting blistered. Yeah, I mean, that and yeah,
100%.
the call centers and everything. Oh, my word.
Yeah, that just had to be a miserable experience. So
Phew.
we need to help our employees, right? Help them be calm and composed. Help them understand things like active listening. Hey, just saying I understand why you feel that way, making eye contact, just actually listening to people, empathy, and to avoid arguing or being defensive too. If you work for a brand, obviously everyone has issues with whoever their employer is. That's natural, but you also feel a natural desire to defend them. And when somebody starts screaming at you at the register, you need to know how to defuse that and not just start screaming back.
Yeah. It's almost I just thought of something because I was out of college. I worked for Banana Republic. Same thing. I was like, on the
Nice.
cash register as you many years ago. And I was just thinking, I was like, everybody out of high school should be required to go work a retail job like that for 6 months. And then a
Mhm.
lot of these things that you're talking about, would dwindle quite a bit because everybody would understand how the person on the other side feels.
Oh,
And it would,
that's the truer words have never been spoken. I think that's such a great. You
yeah,
just don't know how bad it is until you're doing it, and it's you know you you're 18, 19, 20 years old. You probably
Mhm.
slept 5 hours the night before because you're out having fun. And then
Yep.
you're in there at work and you're just getting screamed at by people for things
Mhm.
that you have nothing to do with. It's people
Yeah,
banging on the doors after you close, screaming at you because they can't come buy something. Well, I don't have
yeah,
control of that.
and on top of that, you're making minimum wage, so you're like, "Wha" yeah,
100%. Yeah, you're
yeah.
not getting paid enough to deal with that.
Yeah, so,
Yeah,
uh,
so we need to equip them with these tools, right?
mhm.
We need to preserve the sanity and the capacity to deal with these things for our frontline employees, and that gets missed a lot. These are the people who can cause or prevent crises for you. That's it. Same thing. Employee well-being. Let's train them, right? If you're not training your employees to deal with this stuff, they're not going to get the education somewhere else. And I think it's really important to create a supportive work environment and have clear policies and procedures. And one thing that I don't see happening a lot with clients is, hey, if a frontline employee comes to management and says this just happened, you don't just say, "Oh, that person's a jerk," right? Let's break down what happened, what would have been the right thing to do, and maybe the not so right thing to do, and actually help them learn. And I keep hitting on this because so many crises are caused by just a simple employee interaction. I just had a veterinary clinic client where an individual was leaving. They were upset because they said that they hadn't agreed to the charges, which they signed a paper saying they agreed to.
Mm.
And the front desk person, having a bad day, just said, "Well, maybe you should go somewhere else."
Oh, no.
S and
Oh,
it's I
man.
get how it happens, right? But if that person had better training, maybe they wouldn't have had a negative review. Maybe that person wouldn't be driving around with their car wrapped with a bunch of negativity about that veterinary clinic.
Mm.
Maybe they wouldn't have bought that billboard space that they bought in the same neighborhood as the clinic to tell people not to go there.
Wow.
So it can spiral from one bad frontline interaction, which is why I'm putting so much time into this. It's
Mm.
really huge. If you have good customer service, you prevent a lot of crises.
Well, what's the, yeah, I know Chick-fil-A is really big on that. They're one of the I think the masters at de-escalating situations, and I think what is the thing they always say? I don't know if you go to Chick-fil-A or not, but it's, it's like, "My pleasure." Everything you do, you tell them, "Can I thank you for doing that. My pleasure, my pleasure. Everything's my pleasure." They just try to create the most calm, relaxed environment you can possibly be in. I think just to de-escalate people from the get-go.
It
So,
works. It's the same thing Disney does.
mhm,
Disney is very stringent with its hiring, but every single employee at Disney will bend over backwards to help you with a smile on their face because they
yep.
grind into you. My wife worked for them, and I'll tell you, you go to a school to learn how to represent them right long before you get to step out there and sell ice cream or whatever you're doing.
Wow, I didn't know that. That's interesting.
Every single employee goes through Disney education before they get to step foot out there in a Disney
That's
uniform. And I'm
brilliant.
talking front line, not executives, just people in the shops.
Well, that's a great strategy because,
It
yeah, I mean,
works.
yeah, incredible. Wow. Huh.
So this, you have to understand when you're making significant operational decisions, there's going to be a PR impact. It's not overly complicated, it just gets ignored. If we're
Mhm.
changing services, people will probably be upset. If we're moving staff around, people will probably be upset. So we just need to know anytime we make a significant operational decision, let's look at what could go wrong.
Gotcha.
The court of public opinion. So accusations just get shared everywhere, right? If you
Mhm.
file a complaint in court, you can say whatever you want, and reporters will just print that complaint long before you actually get your day in court. So
Wow.
it's important to know that you can't just wait and say, well, we'll be vindicated when this case is done. You need to be looking at PR now, and doing what you can, obviously in sync with your legal counsel. But you cannot wait till something's been in the news with rumors for 8 months, a year, 2 years, and then come out and say, "Hey, we won the case." Nobody will care. They'll already understand in their mind that you're guilty of all these things.
Wow. So obviously, at this point, the best strategy I would assume would jump in and publish your own PR to counteract anything. Is that what you would do at this point?
Yeah, very much depending on the specifics of the situation, but getting out there to at least say, hey, these things aren't true and we intend to demonstrate that in court. If you just say we're going to say nothing at all,
Mm.
you could be headed for trouble.
So the no comment, you hear that a lot. No comment, no comment.
Oh,
And it's like, yeah, it's
I hate no comment. I no comment. No comment is a four-letter word in our book. It would be better. It would be better to say, due to pending litigation, we can't speak to this right now. You're still saying no comment, but
yeah.
the words no comment to people means we're guilty.
Yep,
It
exactly.
evokes the old images of some guy pulling his suit jacket over his head and
Mhm.
running to his car.
That's
That's
exactly every time I've ever heard no comment, I say, "Yeah, you're guilty of something then. You've done it. You just, no comment.
yep,
You don't wanna cause any more trouble for yourself." So,
yep, 100%. So analyzing customer feedback, right? Use this feedback to fix things. It's we don't need to wait until there's a viral campaign to shut down your store. If you start noticing that people are identifying a common issue, fix the issue. But if we don't ask people, if we don't take that feedback, we don't know. And that's the biggest thing I see is people are act like it's some great mystery to discover what customers want or what they feel when we have a million tools to ask them these days. So I'm a huge fan of just going out and asking people what they want. We had a client who obviously the situation in Israel and Gaza is a complex and a tragic one. We had a company who's an international association. They have members in Israel. They have members in Gaza. In fact, they have members in every country in the world. Um, when that whole situation was happening, first they said, "Well, we shouldn't make a statement." They just assumed that's what they should do. Everyone on both sides was upset. Then they
mm,
decided we should make a statement, a nice neutral, just compassionate general statement. They made the statement. Everyone on both sides was upset because it wasn't enough in one way or another. What they never did was ask people what their expectation is, what they want them to be talking about, and what they want them to not be talking about. And
gotcha.
because they never asked, they could not make an informed move. And it
Hmm.
just created a hole that they were just stuck in, right? They didn't know what to do. And now everyone's mad and not giving good feedback and just yelling at them.
Yeah, that's true.
That's where you get in and just I'm a huge believer in informed decision making.
And you
Let's
think
get data, let's get information. What you'll see in a lot of crisis education stuff out there, and no offense to other folks who are writing about this, but so much of what's out there just says immediately communicate, full transparency. No, we need to understand, first of all, are enough people even mad that we need to talk about this? If
mm,
they're not, let's be quiet and keep monitoring. If people are mad in a high volume and they do actually want us to say something, let's look at those stats. Let's make sure those are our customers, our audiences.
mhm.
Let's make an informed decision about when, where, and why we're doing things. There's no cookie cutter approach. I
Right.
really believe in being informed by data and asking and listening to people to make sure we're doing what we should be doing.
Well, that's interesting, yeah, because I never thought about that. Some storms will obviously spread and some just kinda die out of it, so, yeah, to overreact and jump on something that's, fizzles out in 30 minutes online or something, then, yeah, but you gotta play both sides of it.
100%. Yeah, if people expect it, then you need to do what they expect, right? So it's yeah, it's not a never, but immediately going out there and doing things without data is troublesome in my book.
Hmm,
Social media, I'll just hit this real quick. We all know what social media is. It's very important when you're using it for crisis that you don't just say, "Oh, let's just put the youngest person in the office on social." They have a lot of followers on Insta, right? And this is still what's happening in a lot of places. We need to make sure that we're using social media, yeah, everyday marketing, all of that. But we need to make sure someone who knows what they're doing is using it when it comes to crisis time. It's a real pitfall to put someone who's good at traditional marketing in charge of crisis on social.
Huh. Yeah, because that's just, with the social media thing too, it just seems like it grows and grows. It's one of those things that when it came out, as everybody knows, when it was not really came out, when it became more popular in the US, it used to just always be a way for people to, share their vacation pictures or, what look at their sister's wedding pictures or something, and now it's a I mean, there's still that part of it, but it's also just it's such a tool, just like you said, destroy lives. You can do all kind of things with it, and it's it's not. I hope I'm wrong. I hope I'm not naive, but the people who created these things originally, I hope their original intention was to create something that would help people, but unfortunately, it's more, in my opinion, it's hurt people more than help. But
Yeah, it's done a lot of good, right? But yeah, it's the more they're monetized, and the more precedents they set, at least in the States, there's more robust protections for removing things in the EU in particular.
Mhm.
But in the States, there's so much precedent for them not having to remove anything, not
Yep.
really having to moderate anything, that it is, there's far more negativity than positivity there. I'll say that for
Yeah,
certain.
unfortunately, yeah. So,
So online monitoring. If you're not monitoring your brand, heck, for anyone out there who's a solo practitioner, an individual doing business, if you're not monitoring for your name online, why? You need to know when
yeah,
someone's talking about you or your brand. And
exactly.
there's free ways to do it, right? Google Alerts, number one, free, 100% free. Set it up for your name, set it up for your business name. Everyone should have this going. For social media too, there's quite a few tools. Hootsuite has a free version. I'll throw out Mention is one that I really like for small to medium businesses. It's not thousands of dollars per month like some of these enterprise ones, but that'll let you customize and filter and catch mentions of your name and your brand online. And this is so big. We just had a client recently where we saw a mention of them online because a state attorney general tweeted, "We're filing a case against this company."
Oh
We
no.
called the company and said, "Did you know about this?" And they said, "No, we haven't been served anything."
Oh my word.
And so they had 24 hours, which it sounds short, but that's quite a long time in crisis management. They
Mhm.
had 24 hours to prepare. As
Mm.
soon as that filing actually came to them, and as soon as reporters started calling, we had a statement ready. And
Wow.
so it can be tremendously valuable to just give yourself a little bit of lead time.
Mm.
And as much as it hurts to listen to, people do not candy coat things online. And if you can parse through just the straight up haters to find some legitimate complaints people have, that can be super helpful.
Hmm. Interesting.
Directly engaging people. I touched on this a little bit, but let's get feedback from people. It's cheap and easy to run a survey. It's cheap and easy to run a focus group. People will come do focus groups for a bag of chips, basically. It's not something that you have to spend a lot motivating people to do. If you don't ask people what they think, you don't know what they think.
It's
That's
true.
it. And so if you can get that unfiltered feedback, if you can understand their needs and desires, you can better adapt your messaging and your customer service to fit that.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. I mean, it's like old school marketing, but unfortunately, according to you, it's not used all the time. So,
It's really not. It's something that it's strange, right? We have all these surveys, all of these online tools, rather, all this demographic data, and people tend to focus it on how do we push ads to different groups, which, hey, that's great. I'm not against targeted ads and things like that. But let's ask people what they think about you. Perception is reality.
yep,
It's an old adage for a reason. And you need to understand what people's expectations are because failing to meet expectations is maybe the most common cause of crises
sure.
more than anything else.
Yeah, exactly.
So reviews I'll touch on briefly here because this is a huge part, right? As soon as I'm mad at a company, this phone's coming out and pulling it up, and guess what? Google's saying, "Do you want to leave a review of this place you just left?"
Exactly. Yeah.
And you know what? Yes, I do actually. And that's what people are doing. I mean, people are leaving reviews of businesses they've never even been to just to pump up, get the little Google stickers and things they give you.
No, yeah, like
Reviews are
a
huge.
official guide or something like that. You can
100%. Yep, exactly. Reviews are huge. 85% of consumers trust reviews as much as personal recommendations. That means they're trusting this random person on the internet as much as they trust, mom and dad saying, "Hey, this company was
Mhm.
great." So that's massive. 70% of consumers have changed their opinion about a brand after it replied to a review. So this is all illustrating how important it is to care about this stuff, to look at it and actually do something about it when negatives pop up. And in a similar vein, hiring. 60% of job seekers won't apply to a company with a bad Glassdoor rating. Do you know how
Really?
easy it is for an employee you've ticked off to get on Glassdoor and really take you apart?
That's probably what a lot of them do, like, the it's immediately.
Everyone who gets fired does that.
Yeah, they
100%.
get fired and they're going to Glassdoor. I never even realized that. Man, that's
No,
powerful.
and you can do it anonymously while you work at the company. And we see it. If your employees don't feel cared for, protected, empowered,
Mm,
they're going to take you apart on Glassdoor, and that's going to make it harder to get other talent. So it's a
yeah,
real snowball effect, even with
I
hiring.
never I've been on Glassdoor plenty of times, but I never realized that had such a powerful effect.
Yeah, it's big. It's really
Wow,
big.
crazy.
So being proactive with crisis management, and I know we're uh, a little bit short on time, so I'll zoom through a bit of this. But there's a few things we need to do to be proactive. Predictive analysis. This means using our data, using our social listening tools to understand customer sentiment and trends, right? If we're a company where people are always borderline upset, and if we're BP, right? If we're BP and people are mad at us for spilling oil, yeah, spilling oil sucks. Is
Mhm.
BP surprised by people being upset about that? No.
Yeah.
So do they need to change something in their business plan? No. At the same time, if you run a daycare and people are usually posting fun pictures of their kids and suddenly it's all negative mentions for a day, you have a
Mhm.
problem.
Yep.
So it's more than just happy or sad. It's really what's the trend and is the trend changing for the worse? Regular training and simulations. Look, nobody's good at anything the first time they try it, right? You wouldn't go try to box a trained fighter without getting in the ring and doing some practice rounds first. Yet people just want to walk into crises and say, "I got this." You just
Mhm.
don't got this. You have to have training, right? You have to have been there before. If you haven't been there before, you're not going to do a good job. And in line with that is having the crisis plan. Crises are stressful for anyone who's dealing with them. If you don't have a plan, then you're going to be trying to wing it. You're going to be trying to create a plan when you're stressed out and your plate's already full. You just have to have a plan. And some of the other things we've been talking about, right? Digital preparedness. So if somebody is wrecking you on Facebook and you don't have a Facebook, that's a problem.
Mhm.
And so it's important to have those platforms where you can respond to people. And I think beyond that, just really getting perspectives from everybody in your organization. What are your pain points and how can we fix those? Are you empowered to escalate things? We see a lot of things like folks we talk to from client organizations will say, I don't know how to get a hold of my manager on the weekend. Well, what if they spot a crisis boiling up on social media and they need to let
Wow.
someone know? What if they're at a barbecue and their friend says, hey, I heard about a protest for your company. You can't get a hold of anyone to escalate that. That's a huge,
That's
huge problem.
yeah. Wow. This is just I'm not saying a whole lot because I'm honestly in shock. A lot of the stuff you're telling me, I just had no idea. It's great information. Just you don't realize what's going on behind the scenes, though.
Yep, exactly. And you can get far. Look, lots of organizations have just been lucky. They haven't had to deal with it. And that's
Mhm.
great. But when you have to deal with it, you need the tools to do so. Right. If there's a fire and we don't have a hose, we're in trouble.
Yeah. Yeah, we're gonna burn out real fast.
Yeah.
Not gonna be much left.
Yep. So, speaking to that, a lot of companies will say everyone loves us. No one ever says anything bad about us. That's not going to carry you through a crisis. It will cushion things, right? Having a lot of people that love you is great. That's a good thing to build up. But if something is truly going wrong, and we've seen this with, hey, let's talk Volkswagen, right? Volkswagen has a huge reputation as family friendly, safe, dependable, all of this, and then they had their huge diesel emissions scandal.
Oh, yeah. My brother-in-law got caught up in that. I remember
There you
that.
go. So
Yep.
pain in the rear end for
Mhm.
millions of people.
Yeah.
And you know what? When you have a good reputation, when you get caught lying or doing something wrong, your fall from grace is harder than someone that has a bad one.
It
Right?
is.
I talked about BP. Spills oil. That's bad. Does it really hurt BP's reputation? No. Everyone knows that's what happens already. Lance Armstrong is held up as the example of honest competition, hard work, overcoming adversity. Turns out he's been roiding his whole career. Big fall. Big fall.
Hmm. Yeah, it's amazing. I know I know we don't have a lot of time, but my brother-in-law talking about the Volkswagen crisis, people who not are not familiar with that, he had to put the car in a garage and then buy a second car, and it took, I don't know what, it was weeks, maybe months before Volkswagen ever settled.
It
And
was a huge pain.
he had 2 car payments, that he had to balance until he got, the settlement, but it is a nightmare.
Yep. Yeah, it's a huge pain. So it's yeah, people have high expectations. It's gonna hurt you more if you fail to meet them.
Yeah.
One thing I just touch on real quick. Remember, everything you say is on the record. Practice
Mhm.
restraint of pen, tongue, and send button. Reread that email 5 or 6 times if you're not sure. It's worth doing,
Yeah,
okay? You can't unsend well, in a few cases now you can unsend emails. I wouldn't bank on it. But just be careful. You can't take it back. It'll be screenshotted, recorded, immortalized. Make sure you actually are saying what you want to say wherever you're saying it. And just general crisis management best practices: empathy, effective communication, quick resolution, training, and preparedness. You need to care about people. Your communications need to show that you're compassionate, competent, and confident. And you need to actually try to solve things. You can't talk about solving something and not actually solve it. And I think that's a mistake people make a lot of times. We care, we care so much. We love you guys. What are you doing though? Is something that's overlooked.
yeah, it's true. Wow, man, again, this is so much. This is excellent. Thank you so much for sharing this. This is incredible.
Of course.
So if it's okay, I'm gonna check with the audience here. Does anyone have any questions? I'm gonna check the chat box here, and I don't see anything right now. So if you guys have any questions at all for Eric, please just type them here in the chat box and I will be sure to ask him. In the meantime, I have some questions of my own for Eric. I would love for him to actually share some of his crazy stories real quick, some of the things that just have that he's gone through over the past year, several years that just stand out are one of those moments where he probably, I don't know, he went home and had a drink afterwards or whatever. But Eric, can you please share a couple of those events? I'm sure people would love to hear about them.
Yeah, of course. So I think one that's top of mind that was really a tragic one was that I have a client. They're a food manufacturer, and a so they had a situation where a competitor's product caused a child to choke and die,
Oh
which
no.
obviously horrible tragedy. Not my client's product though, not
Mhm.
their product. So they're acting in good faith, right? And they say we're going to do a voluntary recall. We'll pull our stuff off the shelves, no problem. We want to make sure ours is safe too. So they did it, and what happened is the government organization that was announcing the recall announced both the recalls in the same press release.
Oh, so they
So
assumed it was connected.
100%. So
Oh,
news articles came out misunderstanding the thing. hundreds and hundreds of people wrote and were absolutely furious. How could you endanger my child? And they're just saying, we we didn't, we didn't, right? But they're getting negative reviews. They're getting hammered online. Luckily, they were following some of these best practices, right? They quickly listened, they understood what was happening, and they got messaging out there that clarified. So they
Mm,
took a big hit right up front, but they were ready to address it. And so they were able to turn it around. Now, there's still probably 50 news stories out there that say their product killed someone.
yeah,
And we're working on getting those changed. But
yeah, yeah.
we stopped, we triaged, right? And then they can address the issues. So that was a
Mm,
big one. We had another one recently too, where it's a large home builder down in Texas, and a fire started in a community where this person where they were building homes. Some random person online just said, "Hey, the X builder started this fire. I was down there by their site and I saw all of this fire starting." Uh, well, the official fire department report came out. They did not start the fire.
mhm,
But it had been on the news. It was in social. People were absolutely furious about that too, and it was tough, right? But the good thing was they have a really strong frontline customer service team that's educated on how to handle these things. They had a protocol where they escalated it to legal and comms, and by the next morning, the call center had a script to deal with that and say, wasn't us. Here's the proof. And
right.
so same thing, it takes some work to clean it up, but they were able to stop the bleeding right away because they did some of the prep that we've talked about.
That was, yeah, almost like they built a huge wall in front of a tidal wave. I mean, it just, yeah, it kinda it wow, incredible. Huh,
100%.
wow. We did have one question here pop up, not to interrupt you, from
Sure.
Alexander. He, wrote, "Should you, immediately respond to a competitor's attempts to tarnish your reputation, or should you wait until things calm down on their own?" I think we probably covered that some, but, uh
Yeah, I think so. I think that comes back to what we're talking about measuring what's
mhm,
actually happening. If they're out there just talking trash, for lack
yeah,
of a better term, if they're out there and people aren't believing and repeating what they're saying, they're just making themselves look bad. If you have indication that someone's belief people who matter to you are believing and repeating what they're saying, you
mhm,
need to jump on that. So I would never assume things are going to calm down on their own. You need to be measuring that.
okay, yeah,
If you're doing things like getting calls about it, getting an unusual number of cancellations, things like that, it's probably prudent to get out there and say, we know somebody's saying these things. Here's the truth. If nobody cares about what they're saying, you don't want to point people in that direction.
yeah, that's true, that's true. Another question then we have for you that came up, your line of work, can you tell us what your favorite things are about what you do and also your least favorite things?
Sure. Yeah. I think my favorite thing is probably actually resolving these issues.
Mhm,
I think is the biggest thing. As much as everybody likes to make corporations and big companies the bad guy, a lot of times it's just people who are genuinely trying to do their best to
mhm,
provide a good or a service, right? They're not out to
yeah,
get you. They're not out to rip you off. They're just genuinely trying to do what they're supposed to be doing. And these folks just get villainized. And we see this a lot in our work with schools, with public schools.
I didn't think about that, wow,
Yeah, where they're being villainized, and it's not because anyone's done something wrong, it's because something bad has happened. And so I like being able to actually help people get back to business as usual and get on with their lives, just hearing the personal impact these things have. I think my least my least favorite, oh, a lot of I don't know if it's my least favorite, but I think it's maybe an unexpected side. Is a good part of being a crisis consultant is
mm,
almost being a an armchair therapist for your clients. There's a lot of emotion involved when you're named and blamed and things like this.
yeah, so you're
When your company is at risk, and I don't hate it, but it's difficult. It's difficult to deal with that type of interaction.
well, sure, yeah, because that's, as a business owner as you are, even if it's a big company in a way, it's like they say, that's your baby, and it's, your baby's being attacked or your kid's being attacked. It almost is like that. And I'm sure you have to, I didn't think about that aspect of your work too, because yeah, you have to have the therapy side to be like, all right, I would assume it's going to be okay. Let's calm down. Here's what we
Exactly.
can
And
do.
I guess I'll add just only hearing the worst case of things.
Mhm.
It doesn't make you tremendously confident in a lot of things out in the world when all you hear is when things go wrong with them.
Gotcha. Gotcha. So one more question we have here: the how much percentage-wise estimate when you're going after or trying to handle a crisis? How much PR do you have to use on a percentage basis? Would you say is it every case, as far as going out and publishing something in an online media source, or is it something more or less where it's just one out of two times, or one out of five times, or what would you estimate on that?
Um, I think a lot more crisis management is strictly internal comms than people maybe realize.
Hmm.
It's it's very often we're doing some kind of public communication. It is maybe 50% of the time, but a lot of times things are internal. Things like change management, when there's a lot of restructuring internally, that's often crisis management. A lot of times, if we're doing our job well, we maybe don't have to talk to a reporter either because we've dealt
Yeah,
with those individual audiences. So it
nice.
depends how out of control things have gotten.
Yeah, sure. Interesting. Okay, well, we're at the top of the hour here. Let's see. Again, I don't want to. I know you got stuff to do. You're a busy man and all that, so I don't want to hold you up anymore. But again, thank you for joining us today. This has been
Of
super
course.
enlightening. For those of you watching, anything with crisis management you need, please reach out to Eric Bernstein at bernsteincrisismanagement.com. He's your go-to guy. His team can definitely help you and anything you're working with or anything you're dealing with. So again, Eric, thank you so much for joining us, and we appreciate it.
Yeah, of course. It's been a pleasure. It's been fun. Anytime.
All right, take care and have a good day.
Thanks much. Bye bye.
Bye bye.